Good evening. Good evening. Today we are going to start qualitative and quantitative analysis of organic compounds. Now, first, what is the difference between the word qualitative and quantitative analysis? See, that is, you just have to find out what is present in an unknown organic compound. And when we say quantitative, then remember the chapter stoichiometry. Quantitative, it means that you need to find whatever compound or whatever molecule or an element is present in a given substance. Then what is the percentage presence in terms of its mass or molecules or volume, if it is a gas or a liquid, in given unknown substance. So when you start finding those things, those unknown substances in terms of percentage presence of individual elements, ions, or compounds, then it is called quantitative analysis. But before that, what is present, what is not present, to find out what type of elements or ions or compounds are present in this unknown substance, then it is known as qualitative analysis. First, we are going to deal with qualitative analysis. After that, we will go for quantitative analysis. So, qualitative, we are just worried about what is present. How much is present is not of our much concern at this stage. Correct? So, coming to qualitative analysis of organic compound always compulsorily will always have carbon and hydrogen. Correct? Organic compounds will compulsorily have carbon and hydrogen. Yes, besides carbon and hydrogen, there could be presence of oxygen, there could be presence of nitrogen, halogens, phosphorus, sulfur, and so on. Okay, but compulsory presence is of carbon and hydrogen if it is an organic compound. So first we are going to deal with how to detect the presence of carbon and hydrogen in an unknown organic compound. Okay, for that we use Liebig's combustion method. We use a method which is called Liebig's combustion method. Now, what is this Liebig's combustion method? It is a method to estimate carbon and hydrogen with the help of dried CuO. With the help of dried CuO. So, what we do, we take known amount of unknown organic compound. Let the organic compound be represented as CXHY. So we take known amount. We should know what amount you are taking, so many grams, so many milligrams, and we heat it strongly. We heat it strongly with dried CuO. We heat it strongly with dried CuO. Now, practical conditions may, what we do is we take one part of this and we take 8 parts of CuO. The practical care that we take is this CuO should be 8 times. Second care what we take is CuO is hygroscopic. CuO is hygroscopic, that is, it absorbs water. So before introducing CuO in this mixture of 1:8 composition, we ignite CuO. First, we ignite CuO. So CXHY, unknown organic compound, though the amount taken should be known. 8 parts of CuO, and then we heat or almost burn it strongly, the reaction takes place. As a result, this X carbon is converted to XCO2. This Y hydrogen is converted to Y by 2 H2O. Okay. Now this, as I said, we are heating strongly, we are burning it almost. So this both will be obtained as gaseous mixture. This CO will be converted to copper. That will be solid, will be left behind. We are only interested in this gaseous mixture. Okay, so now this gaseous mixture, if I want to check it, that whether it is present or not, so I'll pass step 1, I'll pass this gaseous mixture on anhydrous CuSO4. Now anhydrous CuSO4 is white. As soon as we pass this mixture on anhydrous CuSO4, it will become CuSO4 dot 5H2O, which is blue in color. So change of that anhydrous CuSO4 from white to blue will give us the confirmation that yes, this unknown compound was having H2 hydrogen or H atoms. That is why there was water. Okay. Step 2, the resultant gas. The resultant gas is now passed, okay, is now passed through lime water. Now lime water, which is clear, freshly prepared lime water is clear solution like water, है ना, pass through lime water. CO2 turns clear lime water milky. We will have a white turbidity due to formation of CaCO3. Okay, what is happening is lime water is clear solution of calcium hydroxide. So when CO2 is passed, then it starts forming CaCO3, which is a sort of turbidity, which is making the solution milky. Okay, this will make the solution milky. Yes, but we need to take care that there is a possibility that you got this milky solution and you don't stop CO2 passage. If then, due to the formation of calcium bicarbonate, it will become again a clear solution. Okay, so you need to know when to stop. If you have obtained the turbidity, you need to stop. If you won't stop, if you just keep on passing the CO2, then the turbidity will disappear. Okay, but now the problem is you are not aware that this unknown organic compound was having carbon, hydrogen only. It can also have, Hannah, it can also have sulfur. If sulfur is present in organic compound, we are not aware, but if it is present, okay, then in the above setup with CuO, SO2 will be obtained. And SO2 also gives same reaction like CO2. Okay, SO2 will be obtained. Therefore, after passing gas on anhydrous CuSO4, second step is through acidified K2Cr2O7 solution. Okay, in acidified K2Cr2O7 solution, SO2 will be converted to SO3. Okay, and then through lime water, and then through lime water. Okay, so the sequence then should be first anhydrous copper sulfate, then acidified dichromate, and then lime water. I hope it is absolutely clear. If it has phosphorus and all, then we'll think in coming steps how to confirm their presence. So this is our first portion, that is how to confirm whether the compound has carbon and hydrogen or not. That is our first stage. Okay, moving to detection of other elements. Detection of other elements is definitely required. And detection of other elements बोले तो कौन से? We need nitrogen, sulfur, halogen, phosphorus. Okay, nitrogen, sulfur, halogen, phosphorus. These are detected by first Lasinas test. Now, Lasinas test is also known as sodium fusion test or sodium fusion extract test. Okay. Now, what we do in this particular method is we take our organic compound, we heat it with sodium very strongly. Okay. Now let me show you. We have a very small fusion tubes in lab. They are very small like this. Not even test tubes. Let me try to make it more clear that how it looks. They are hardly of 2 to 3 inches. Okay, and they are thin. I added this much width to it, but they are relatively thin. Now what we do is we put sodium, okay, but as a precaution, we should first always put organic compound. So let us take organic compound with this gray. So we put organic compound, then we will put sodium, then again organic compound, then sodium. We fill the tube like this by our repeated methods. Okay, ये red से I am using, here it is sodium, here it is sodium. Okay, this is sodium, and this gray thing was organic compound, organic compound, organic compound. So we form this type of bedded structure, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. Now we start heating it on the flame directly. We heat this whole thing in the flame directly, of course, with the help of test tube holder. Okay. Then next step, when it becomes red hot. The whole tube will become hot. It will appear red. This whole thing will melt. This whole thing will melt. It will become red hot, and you will find a colorless liquid type thing present here. Okay, this whole thing should be red. एकदम red हो जाती है ये. It becomes red. Then we immediately put it into a large test tube which is having almost 1/3 level or half level per water. We introduce this red tube inside, but as you put this red tube inside, it will become pieces. Okay, and everything will go inside. Now I will boil this. Boil, and then we'll filter. Okay, now we will filter our content. Okay, this clear solution is known as Lysines extract or sodium extract or sodium extract. Okay, so this is how we prepare Lysines extract. This small tube is known as fusion tube. इसे बोलते ही लैब में है fusion tube. This is a normal test tube. Correct? This is a special test tube, very small. Correct? So what is the purpose of using sodium? Why sodium? First, reactive enough. It is reactive enough to convert organic or covalent bonds of elements into ionic bonds. Okay, it is reactive enough to convert organic or covalent bonds of elements into ionic bonds. Then we can apply all our usual qualitative analysis test. And second is also easy in handling as compared to potassium, cesium, etc. Okay, is that correct? Now what is the reaction that has taken place? वो अभी अपन देखते, that we'll see. ठीक? So what will happen now? Inside this particular reaction, sodium, carbon was present. Okay, nitrogen was present. Then there will be formation of NaCN. If it was having halogen, then there is presence of NaX. If there is sulfur, if it is sulfur plus nitrogen, then it is NaCNS. Okay, so as whatever is present as per the presence of the particular element, now these things are present in our Lysines extract. These things are present in our Lysines extract. This is how we'll represent Lysines extract now onwards. Okay. So now what is the test of individual elements? Say for test of nitrogen. So if we are going to test nitrogen, okay, if we are going to test nitrogen, then what happens? So as I said, the carbon and nitrogen are converted to NaCN. So our unknown compound is having NaCN. Unknown compound present in Lysines extract is NaCN. In that NaCN, okay, in that NaCN present, we will add acidified concentrated sulfuric acid की help से acidified iron to sulfate. So we are having FeSO4, but we definitely along with this add few drops of concentrated H2SO4. We add concentrated H2SO4 ke few drops. Okay, why we are adding this concentrated H2SO4? So that if at all ferric hydroxide is formed, it will be neutralized. Otherwise, it will mask, it will cover up our Prussian blue color. Okay, so its purpose is to neutralize Fe3 plus hydroxide if at all formed. So when we add FeSO4, then this complex anion is formed. FeCN6 4 minus, this complex anion is formed, Na4FeCN6 as a compound. Correct? Up now we have two choices. Either you add Fe3 plus from outside, or what happens is some of the FeSO4 present automatically gets oxidized to Fe3 plus. That Fe3 plus within the mixture, you have also added constant SO4 that will help. Fe3 plus and Na4FeCN6, they together will form Fe4FeCN6 whole thrice. Okay, they together will form Fe4FeCN6 whole thrice. Now this Fe4FeCN6 whole thrice is called ferricyanide. It is ferricyanide. This is iron 3, this is iron 2, ferricyanide. This ferricyanide which is produced, okay, which is produced immediately will give us a Prussian blue color. Now what is Prussian blue color? Prussian blue color is a peacock blue which has a very shiny appearance. See, this is when we add our Fe2 plus. After some time, this is what we'll observe. This is start of Prussian blue formation. Just started. And when the reaction took to completion and we have added and stirred it a lot, then this is how it appears. Okay, this is how the Prussian blue color will appear. See, यहाँ से start हुए, this is how it will appear. Okay, so appearance of this Prussian blue color in this particular test confirms that nitrogen was present in the compound. Clear? This is very important Lysines test. Now, what compounds do not give Lysines test? Let me give you this important note. Lysines test for nitrogen fails for first inorganic compounds. Okay, if the compound does not have carbon in it, for example, if we are asked hydrazine, then it will fail. So it has to be an organic compound. That is step number 1. Second, it fails for azo or diazo ions, azo compounds. Azo compounds means end-double bond end linkage. Diazonium ions means N2 plus linkage. Sometimes it fails for polynitro compounds, but that is not always. That is a simple drawback of the test, that sometimes it gives very erroneous result with polynitro compounds. But this you have to keep in your memory always, that it fails for inorganic compounds when there is no carbon, azo compounds, diazonium ions. Then this test totally fails. Okay. Moving to next is test of sulfur. If sulfur is present in the organic compound, sodium fusion, that is Na2S, is formed. Okay. Sodium fusion extract will have Na2S. To it, we add sodium nitroprusside, Na2FeCN5NO. This is very light yellowish, otherwise colorless. And when we add, then we have Na4FeCN5NOS, violet color. Both Prussian blue and this Na4FeCN5NOS, both are colors, they are not precipitate. Now here it is very concentrated solution, so it is looking more towards brownish, but this has to be purple violet. This is purple violet appearance if sulfur is present alone. Okay. Now if sulfur is present alone, this is the test number 1. This is how you can test number 1. Number 2 you can do is, if the Lysines extract, take its few drops in a separate test tube, and you can add AgNO3 to it. Then black precipitate of Ag2S. Or if you add lead acetate, then PbS black will be formed. Okay. So based on whatever you add here, you will get colored precipitate of sulfides that can also be used as a test for sulfur. I hope this is very clear. If both sulfur and nitrogen are present together, in case if both are present together, then what happens, that sodium, carbon, nitrogen and sulfur, all three together form NaSCN. Okay, NaSCN. This NaSCN, when treated with some Fe3 plus ion. So if we treat this NaSCN with any Fe3 plus ions, then we get complex cation FeSCN2 plus. Okay, then we get this particular complex cation, which is blood red coloration. It appears like a blood red color. Okay, but to have this test, you should have limited sodium. If by error we have added excess sodium, if excess of sodium metal is used, then this NaCN decomposes to NaCN and Na2S. Okay, and halogens, we completed what if sulfur and nitrogen are present in excess amount, then what will happen? Okay, but if the given compound has halogen in it, then what would be the reactions? If the given unknown organic compound has halogen in it, then as a result, it will have NaX in our Lysines extract. Okay, sodium will break down the covalent bonds of X with carbon and ultimately will convert it to ionic compound NaX, sodium halides. Assuming if halogen is chlorine, then the observations will be, okay, so let us start. So now we have prepared the Lysines extract. Our test 1 is with AgNO3. So we take small amount of Lysines extract in a separate test tube, and to it now we add AgNO3. When we add AgNO3 to Lysines extract, if it was having NaCl, then what we'll observe is AgCl. AgCl will appear as a white curdy precipitates. White curdy precipitates of these AgCl will become soluble once you add ammonia to this AgCl solution. Okay, AgCl is easily soluble in ammoniacal solution, forming a soluble complex diamine silver 1. So white curdy precipitates which are soluble in presence of ammonia will indicate the presence of chlorine in the original organic compound. Okay, if the original compound had bromine, then repeating the similar set of steps that preparing the Lysines extract, we'll have NaBr in it. On addition of AgNO3 to that Lysines extract, we'll have AgBr, which will be pale yellow precipitate. On addition of ammonia, they are also soluble. Okay, if we'll add ammonia, then these pale yellow precipitates are soluble, forming a same complex diamine silver 1. Clear solution will be obtained. Okay, so for AgCl you have a white curdy, for AgBr you had a pale yellow precipitate. In case, okay, in case now if you had iodine in it, okay, in case if we have iodine in it, then this iodine, okay, will form AgI. Correct? If it will form AgI, sorry, NaI, then on addition of AgNO3 in the end, I will have AgI, which are dark yellow precipitates. Okay, these are dark yellow precipitates. If we have iodine, then we'll get dark yellow precipitates. The most important point of difference is AgI, even if you add ammonia, will remain insoluble. Okay, even if we'll add ammonia, then it will remain insoluble. Is that okay? I hope it is clear to all of you that how to test halides, when you are using AgNO3 in Lysines extract. Okay, now we are moving to test number 2, next test for these halides. Now what is the next test for halides? Next test for halides is called layer test. Let me clear how to apply that layer test. Well, layer test is based on density of aqueous and organic solvents, and then there is a redox involved. Now, what type of redox? Let me clear you. For example, I'll exemplify. If I want to check bromine in my organic compound, so I will take Leysinase extract in test tube. To it, I will add either CCl4, or you can add chloroform, or you can add CS2. Any of the three, whichever is available in your laboratory. You can add any of the three. The purpose is just to form an organic layer. Now let me tell you how it will appear in the test tube. If this is my test tube, I have made it just too thick. Let me make it a little. This is my test tube. Then the Leysinase extract is aqueous base. Okay, Leysinase extract is aqueous base. It will be colorless, but it will be on top. Let me form the aqueous layer. Let this blue layer indicates that there is this aqueous layer. Okay. Now down I want to indicate my organic layer chloroform, which of course is going to be colorless. So I'll use some other color. Let me use this. This is my organic layer. This is my organic solvent layer. Why it is down? From here comes a very important question, that chloroform, CS2, as well as carbon tetrachloride, all the three are more dense, are denser than water. And so they will always be at the lower level in the test tube. Okay, so they will be always lower level in the test tube. Upper here, this is aqueous Leysinase extract. Okay, now we will add chlorine water. As per our electrochemical series, this chlorine water will have oxidizing power. Okay, it will oxidize. Here what reaction will take place? That it will react with Br minus, oxidizing it to Br2, and it's converting to Cl minus. Okay, so when this reaction will take place, chlorine is also aqueous base. When I'll add it, it will go into aqueous layer. So in a resultant, if I'll add say 2 ml or something, in a resultant solution, I will have similar aqueous layer increase ho jayega. It will be slight increase. Initially, I won't have any difference. Initially, I won't be able to have any difference in my organic layer. Okay, so I'll let it take some time, shake for almost 1 minute at least, shake vigorously for roughly 1 minute. Now in this part, the reaction is going on, that chlorine is oxidizing Br minus to Br2. Br minus is ionic, it is soluble in aqueous. But Br2 is covalent. It will be insoluble in aqueous conditions. It will be soluble in organic conditions. Okay. So as and as this reaction will proceed, the change that we'll observe is a test tube aqueous layer will remain as such. Aqueous layer will remain as such. It will be clear transparent layer, but the bromine formed is dark brown. So you will have a organic layer converted into dark brown. This will become dark brown, indicating that the original compound had bromine. Is it okay? If I repeat the same test for iodine, same steps, everything is same. Then in the final stage, the only difference will be that down may, instead of the brown, you will have a violet, okay, dark pink violet layer. If you have a dark violet layer, then it will indicate that it was iodine. Okay, so this is how you can confirm that the unknown organic compound could have bromine or iodine in it. Correct? So these are the layer tests for halogens. So we had two tests for halogens. Okay, one was this AgNO3, other was this layer test. Moving to E, test for phosphorus. Yes, I have already said, again I am repeating, that Lysines test can be used for confirmation of phosphorus also. Okay, we have to follow NCERT, in which it is clearly indicated that yes, from Lysines extract you can test phosphorus also. Okay, let's see how. So the compound that we had as original unknown organic compound, it is heated strongly with oxidizing agent like sodium peroxide. If we heat our compound with this, okay, the phosphorus present in it will be oxidized to phosphate ion. Phosphate is PO4 3-. Correct? The solution is boiled with nitric acid. The purpose of adding nitric acid is this sodium peroxide after oxidation will create the medium, will make the medium basic. So this HNO3 will make it acidic, will neutralize it and then will make it acidic. And also HNO3 being a stronger acid than Na3PO4. Okay, HNO3 being a stronger acid. So strong acid will displace weak acid H3PO4 from the salt Na3PO4. So we have H3PO4 generated in the medium. When we acidify the medium, then the weak acid's conjugate base is converted to its own acid H3PO4. Now, after doing this whole thing, we are adding ammonium molybdate. You have to remember the formula, NH4 whole twice MOO4. Okay, NH4 whole twice MOO4. We add ammonium molybdate to this solution. We already had HNO3 in the medium. We added ammonium molybdate. Okay, phosphate was there. And again, we'll wait and shake for some time. We'll stop for some time. What will be the appearance? As and as the reaction will grow, you will have a ammonium molybdate precipitates. NH4 whole thrice PO4 dot 12MOO3. So what will we have? We'll have ammonium phosphomolybdate precipitate. And a very important point, it is canary yellow. The color I am using is the exact color. Canary yellow precipitates. This is the color. To just give you a more idea, I'll use it a little more. Canary yellow, dense, heavy. If you'll calculate the molecular weight of this, you can feel, yes, it is very heavy. Okay, so molecular weight is so heavy, they will be instantaneously bumped down. They'll settle down in the test tube. And this is the color of canary yellow precipitates. These will be obtained. Yes, you can have one more test. That is the magnesium mixture test. That is more confirmatory because this test is also given by arsenate. Okay, but due to the limitation of our time, let's move to quantitative analysis of organic compounds. As far as quantitative analysis is concerned, some of its part you might have seen in your stoichiometry chapter. You must have been across the volumetric analysis, the gravimetric analysis. In gravimetric analysis, you know how chloride can be confirmed by AgCl. right? How sulfate can be confirmed by the weight of BaSO4 obtained as a precipitate, and so on. But very important for JEE is the estimation of nitrogen in an unknown organic compound. Okay, questions are mainly asked for nitrogen estimation. So let's jump to nitrogen estimation. Again, I would say in 2020 mains, there was a question on nitrogen estimation. Okay, you go through that, and the same paper, yesterday I was referring to 7th January evening. In the same paper, there is a question. So what happens? Nitrogen is estimated by two methods. One is Dumas, other is Jaldas. Okay, so let me brief you what is Dumas and what is Jaldas. First, let us go to Dumas method. Okay, Dumas method. In Dumas method, what is being done? So let us see what is being done when they follow Dumas method for the estimation of nitrogen. Okay, so what they do is the organic compound that is under study, is heated with CuO, copper oxide. Okay, you can see here it is a furnace. This whole portion is a furnace. In this furnace, see here, they are heating strongly CuO and organic compound. In the start of lecture, we have already discussed that the CuO, okay, the CuO on reaction with organic compound converts its carbon to CO2 and hydrogen to H2. Okay, but if there is any nitrogen in this particular organic compound, then it is converted to N2 by the CO. So we are heating this organic compound with CuO. Okay, now we are moving from here, we are entering CO2. Okay, it is further copper oxide gauze, so that both sides you can see there is somehow always kept copper oxide this way or that way, so that by chance if any nitrogen is converted to nitrogen oxide, then on moving to this side it is continuously changed to nitrogen. It is never left as nitrogen oxide. Let me write the reaction which is taking place in this particular furnace. What reaction is going on? So we had CXHYNZ. When we are passing it on CuO, CuO solid, CuO gauze. Gauze is nothing but just a type of net. Okay, we have a net of CuO. We are passing through it. When we are passing through it, then there is formation of XCO2. There is formation of Y by 2 H2O. There is formation of Z by 2 nitrogen, and there is formation of 2X plus Y by 2 copper. Copper is reduced to zero oxidation state from +2, whereas carbon and others are oxidized to higher oxidation states. Okay, now we are mainly interested in this. We have made all possible arrangements having excess CuO gauze on both sides of our gases, so that by chance if any nitrogen oxide is formed in the whole process, it is converted anyhow to nitrogen gas. Now we are passing our gaseous mixture here. When you are passing our gaseous mixture from this side, okay, what we want to do is we want to collect our nitrogen gas above this liquid. Okay, we are collecting it over KOH solution. This solution that is being used is potassium hydroxide. The purpose is you are having a KOH solution. So the purpose is KOH here will absorb any CO2 gas which is coming. Water, if any, in the form of vapor will get condensed and will be in the solution. But nitrogen will remain as such. So when we pass our gaseous mixture through this aqueous KOH, then only nitrogen is moving out. Okay, so this nitrogen is coming out and this nitrogen will start collecting over here. Okay, this nitrogen will start collecting over here, but you always know there is, as I am collecting it on aqueous solution, so there will be some water vapors also. Water vapor plus nitrogen. Now here I have this mercury mercury bulb. I'll adjust my mercury bulb. Okay, sorry, not a mercury bulb. I'll adjust this bulb so that the pressure on this side becomes equal to the pressure inside. For that, I have to bring both the liquids at the same level. Okay, once I get both the liquids on the same level, what is the inference? What is the inference? That here it is open to atmosphere, so it is the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so the inference will be taken as when the level is equal, then atmospheric pressure is equal to internal pressure in that cylinder having QH. What is this internal pressure? It is the pressure due to nitrogen plus aqueous tension. Aqueous tension, as you must be aware, at what temperature you are working, you are having an experiment, you use that value of aqueous tension. Atmospheric pressure you already know. So from this you can come to know what is the partial pressure of nitrogen above the solution. Once you come to know partial pressure of nitrogen, then using PV is equals to nRT. And don't you know the volume? Oh, certainly you do. You know the volume. It is a graduated cylinder. It has a marking. So you know the volume of this. So by using that pressure of nitrogen, using that volume of nitrogen, keeping this N as unknown, R is a constant temperature you are aware because you are doing an experiment. You can take thermometer and take the atmospheric temperature under which we are having an experiment. Finding the number of moles of nitrogen. Once we find the number of moles of nitrogen, okay, once we know what is the weight of nitrogen. Weight of nitrogen in this. This much amount of weight of nitrogen was present in this unknown organic compound. And this unknown organic compound, let me take that we have taken is X grams to start with. So now we know that this W, this weight, okay, from here once we know weight of nitrogen, let this be W. So percentage of nitrogen can be calculated as W upon X into 100. Of course, then moles of nitrogen is not equal to weight of nitrogen. Number of moles of nitrogen into 28 will be equal to weight of nitrogen. That weight of nitrogen, use W upon X into 100. This is what will give you the percentage of nitrogen in unknown organic compound. So this is how you can use Dumas method. Please read NCERT. You'll find the numerical related to it. Okay, I hope I have helped you out with Dumas. Let us move to the second one, which is also very important, is Jaldal's method. Okay, so second method is Jaldal's method. In Jaldal's method, we primarily, what we do is we convert our organic compound, nitrogen, into ammonia. That is our first and foremost thing. Okay, so what we do, we heat. This is apparatus number 1. This is setup number 1. These are two different setup. First, and then Jaldal distillation is second. Okay, so in one separate flask, Erlenmeyer flask you can use normal round bottom flask, whatever you get. So in this, you keep organic compound. You must be aware of what weight you have started with. Okay, let me say I started with X grams of organic compound. Now in this I add concentrated H2SO4. Okay, and small amount of copper sulfate is added in this. Remember, copper sulfate is added. Okay, so here we add H2SO4, here we add copper sulfate, and we added our organic compound. Now we heat it very strongly. This H2SO4 is very corrosive. It dissolves the flesh also. If you put a person's finger in concentrated H2SO4, it will just leave the bone and everything will be gone. After some time, I don't know, even the bone will be dissolved to a certain extent. So we'll heat this for very long so as all the organic compound ultimately is totally dissolved in this. This is called digestion. Okay, we are heating it in Jaldal's flask. Jaldal's flask is very technical, or else you can heat it in lab using your normal round bottom flask also. Okay, as a result of this whole process, what we are doing, as a result of this whole process, the nitrogen in our organic compound is converted to ammonium sulfate. We do this very vigorously, and ultimately we get what we get is a ammonium sulfate. Okay, now this ammonium sulfate certainly has a lot of H2SO4 dissolved in it. We haven't get rid of H2SO4 yet. There is excess of H2SO4 present in it. Okay, the resulting acid mixture is now heated with excess of NaOH. Okay, we are heating it with excess of NaOH, our purpose. What will happen when this is converted to ammonium sulfate? Now I am moving to this. Contents of Jaldal's flask after digestion are here. So here my ammonium sulfate. I am adding NaOH. Strong base will start displacing weaker base. Ammonia will be liberated. Okay, as a result, ammonia will be liberated. Now, this ammonia liberated is now passed with known amount of sulfuric acid. Now it is treated with known amount of H2SO4. You should know how much you have taken, N1V1. Okay, some part will be consumed. So ammonium sulfate again will be formed. Ammonium sulfate will be formed. But some H2SO4 will remain as unused. So now again we will treat it with, okay, now again we will treat it reverse. We will treat it with NaOH. The amount of the amount of NaOH consumed here, okay, kitna consume hua, that will give me an idea of H2SO4 unused. Take NaOH. Consumed NaOH here gives us idea of excess H2SO4. You know how much H2SO4 you took. You know how much H2SO4 is left in excess. So what was the amount of H2SO4 consumed by ammonium sulfate can be calculated. Okay, you know N1V1 is the equivalence of H2SO4 taken initially. You know what is the excess of H2SO4. This is equal to the equivalence of H2SO4 consumed by ammonia. Once you know how much is consumed by ammonia, equivalents are to be equal. Once you know how much equivalents are there, this should be equal to equivalence of ammonia. N factor for ammonia in this acid-base reaction is 1. Okay, N factor for ammonia in this acid-base reaction is 1. So equivalence of ammonia will be equal to moles of ammonia. Okay, number of moles of ammonia multiplied by 17 is the weight of nitrogen. Let this be W grams. So percentage of nitrogen is W upon X into 100. Okay, please go through it once more and then it will be more comfortable. With time, you have done a repeat titration. And excess H2SO4 is again estimated by NaOH, so you have to go through it once. Clear? What is the important point related to Jaldal's? Remember that Jaldal's reaction or Jaldal estimation note fails for, again, diazo compounds. It fails for, I would say, pyrrolpyridine. It fails for pyrrolpyridine. It is good for aniline, huh? No problem with aniline. Don't assume from here that all aromatic systems will fail. Only when nitrogen is the part of the aromatic ring. Pyrrolpyridine. It fails for nitro compounds because by adding H2SO4, which is an oxidizing agent, you cannot bring nitrogen from plus oxidation state to ammonia oxidation state. The entire method was based on ammonium sulfate formation. Nitro-on treatment with H2SO4 will not form ammonium sulfate. Same will be the case of nitroso. So nitroso, diazo as this type of diazonium ions, pyrrolpyridine. Okay, these all fail to give Jaldal's method. Okay, so here I'll end my estimation. I hope it was of good help to you to understand this topic. Please go through 2020 January mains 7th January evening paper. It has a question on Jaldal. Otherwise also it is very important. Okay, please revise this, read NCERT complete chapter, solve the questions, and if you have any problem, please ask your concerned teachers or post on our Facebook page. I'll try to help as much as I could through this medium. Thank you everyone. Good night. Take care. See you on Monday. Again 10 a.m. in the morning.